Saint Charbel Makhlouf, born Youssef Antoun Makhlouf, came into the world on May 8, 1828, in the mountain village of Beka Kafra, in Lebanon, within a poor but deeply faithful Maronite Catholic family. His father died when he was still very young, leaving his mother to raise 5 children alone, leaning on faith and quiet strength. From an early age, Youssef showed signs of a contemplative spirit, drawn to silence, captivated by prayer, often retreating to a nearby cave where he would sit alone and speak to God in the stillness. 2 of his uncles were monks, and their quiet, disciplined lives left a lasting imprint on the boy's soul. Though they never preached to him, their example planted in his heart a love for the consecrated life, an unspoken invitation from God that Youssef quietly carried within. In 1851, at the age of 23, Youssef quietly left his family and entered the monastery of Our Lady of Mayfouk, part of the Maronite Order of Lebanon. There, he took the religious name Charbel, after a martyr from ancient Antioch. Not long after, he was transferred to the monastery of Saint Maron in Anaya, where he made his solemn vows and continued his studies in theology and philosophy. He was ordained a priest in 1859 and embraced a hidden life of prayer, manual labor, silence, and ascetic simplicity, following the austere spirituality of Eastern monasticism. After 16 years living in community, he asked permission in 1875 to withdraw into greater solitude. He moved to the hermitage of Saints Peter and Paul, perched high above the monastery, where he would spend the remaining 23 years of his life. There, in a single small room, Father Charbel offered Mass each day, fasted, prayed, meditated, and lived in complete silence. Though hidden from the world, the quiet holiness of his life radiated outward like a flame behind stone walls, drawing hearts in search of meaning, guidance, and grace. On December 16, 1898, while celebrating Mass, Father Charbel suddenly collapsed at the altar, struck by a severe stroke that left him unable to move. He was carried back to his cell, where he lay in silence, his body failing, but his soul anchored in prayer. 8 days later, on the night of December 24th, the eve of Christmas, he quietly breathed his last. No grand farewells, no crowds. Just silence, as if heaven itself had come softly to claim a soul it had long called its own. He was buried in the small cemetery of the monastery of Saint Maron. But that night, something strange happened. A mysterious light began to shine from his freshly covered grave, illuminating the cold, dark hills of winter with an otherworldly glow. The light wasn't fleeting. It returned the next night, and the night after that. Local farmers and monks from the monastery saw it with their own eyes and rushed to investigate, thinking perhaps someone had lit a fire or disturbed the grave. But when they arrived, they found only silence and a radiant light rising from the earth, source unknown. The phenomenon could not be ignored. It caught the attention of the superiors and, in time, of the Church. More than 50 years later, in 1950, the grave was opened. What they found stunned everyone present. Father Charbel's body remained incorrupt, intact, unspoiled by time. Even more mysterious, his body exuded a liquid, clear like water, yet tinged red like blood. Doctors and church officials examined it carefully, but science offered no explanation. News of the discovery spread quickly, not just across Lebanon, but throughout the Catholic world. A man who had spent his life in silence was now being spoken of everywhere. It was around this time that a woman named Mariam Awad, living in Beirut, made her way to the tomb of Saint Charbel. For 22 years, she had been paralyzed from head to toe due to a rare spinal disease. She could not stand, walk, or feed herself, her life confined to a bed, dependent on the constant care of her family. Desperate and weary, she asked to be taken to the monastery where Saint Charbel was buried. There, she prayed through tears, surrendering her suffering and her future entirely to the mercy of God. That night, as she sat alone before his tomb, something strange happened. A warmth, gentle but undeniable, moved through her body. She said nothing. She only closed her eyes and stayed in prayer. The next morning, before the astonished eyes of fellow pilgrims, Mariam stood up. Then she took a step, and then another. She walked, without help, without pain, after more than 2 decades of paralysis. Her doctors later examined her and confirmed what they could not explain: a complete and spontaneous recovery. No treatment, no logic, just healing. The Vatican investigated the case thoroughly, and this miracle was officially recognized as one of the signs presented in the cause for Father Charbel's canonization. After thorough investigations and strict medical examinations, Pope Pius XI officially recognized Father Charbel's heroic virtues. On December 5, 1965, at the closing of the Second Vatican Council, Pope Paul VI declared him blessed. 12 years later, on October 9, 1977, it was again Pope Paul VI who canonized him in a solemn ceremony in Rome. Saint Charbel became the first Maronite saint to be canonized according to the universal rite of the Catholic Church. Although he passed away on December 24th, the night of Christmas Eve, his feast day is not celebrated then, as that sacred night belongs to the liturgy of Christ's birth. Instead, from the early 20th century, the faithful in Lebanon began honoring him on July 24th each year. This date, set in the heart of summer, made it easier for tens of thousands of pilgrims to journey to the monastery in Anaya where he is buried. Over time, July 24th became a long-standing liturgical tradition within the Maronite Church and was officially included in their Synaxare, or Book of Saints, by the 1920s. When Saint Charbel was canonized in 1977, the Vatican chose to retain this feast day, not as an exception, but as a recognition of the Maronite tradition and its full communion with the universal Church. And so, every year on July 24th, both Eastern and Latin Catholics come together to honor this quiet hermit of Lebanon, the man who lived hidden, but whose light could not be hidden, who died in silence, but whose name now echoes in prayers around the world, a man through whom God continues to speak in miracles and in the still, gentle transformation of hearts.